that your Holy Spirit would work through me, and that your name may be praised through what I have to say, Lord. Take my words and magnify it, so that each person may leave here with a different perspective and a better perspective on who God is and how much He loves us. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. So, our theme this week is Own Up. And before I get into anything else, I want to share with you guys a quote from Mr. Holland that's in this thing that he gave us for baptismal class. And it says, hypocrisy and inconsistency happen when we think or say that we are Christians, but live with an old man mindset. We haven't been born again. And this is violation of the second commandment, taking the Lord's name in vain. And they take the Lord's name in vain. So, what does this have to do with our theme? Now, I feel like everything I'm going to say has already been said, because we've talked about hypocrisy, and we've talked about lying to ourselves, telling ourselves that we are one way, but actually living another way. And I just want to expand more on this by telling you my own hypocrisy journey. And so we all know what hypocrisy means, just saying one thing and living another way. And I had hated this idea for a very long time. Like, the idea of, like, you say that you don't like cookies, but then you eat a whole ton of cookies. I didn't understand why anybody could be that way, why they couldn't be true to themselves. And I just been living with this. And 3 years ago now, my parents decided to move us to Texas. And right before moving us to Texas, and this is a key thing, I was baptized. August 29th, 2015. And I was like, yes, now it's Jesus, it's going to be my whole life, and I'm ready, and I'm going to start preaching and all that other stuff. And yeah, I got baptized. And it was a good choice, and I think at the time, I thought I understood baptism, and I think I knew what it meant, but I just wasn't ready all the way. And so we moved to Texas, and there was no Seventh-day Adventist schools. I've been previously going to a private school that was really small, and like we didn't know much about the world. Like we were very sheltered. And then I went to a public school. Well, it was a charter school, Texas Leadership Charter Academy, and they would teach us leadership qualities because they're all Christians, but they couldn't say Christian because the law. And so we learned about all these things, but it was still very different for me because I was the only Adventist in my whole school, like 200 kids, and I'm the only one who knows what like tofu or veggie meat is. Like, it was really weird. Like, I was just an oddball. I didn't fit in that well. So in an effort to make friends, I kind of changed not my ideals, but how I acted upon those ideals. And I wasn't as strong a Christian as I could have been. And inside, I knew the right things, but my other friends weren't doing the right things, and I thought it wasn't cool to do the right things, so I just did what they did in an effort to like be one of them, and I really changed, and that really changed me, yeah. Not for the better, too. It was not a good thing, and I don't know why I'm smiling right now, that was terrible, it wasn't a good thing. And then Sabbath would come, and then here comes Juliette, who's been newly baptized, and she knows all the answers to the questions, and she can lead out in church, and she plays the violin. We can have her play the violin for church, and all the people at church loved me, because I was just a little saint, and I would pray, and I would do all these things in church, acting, like, leading out. We started AY services, we started everything, and then came Monday morning, and I was just as bad as my other friends who didn't know the gospel and who didn't have as much truth as I did. I was doing exactly what they were doing, even on that past Sabbath. I had been preaching, and I was living this double life, and I had been a hypocrite. And that's really hard to admit because I hate hypocrites. I hate hypocrisy, but then I had become one out of my desire or need to just fit in. And I had been living, and when I read this quote, it was like, wow, that's harsh, you know? By living a double life, I had taken the Lord's name in vain. You know, I hadn't honored God by my actions, even though I had claimed to be a Christian, you know, following after Christ. as I was thinking about this, I was thinking, oh, how the mighty have fallen, because I changed not for the better, because of my surroundings and because of my friends, and because of the situation I had been put in. That's the result of what happened. And it's true that I can blame those things, but in reality, the hardest part to admit that it was all my choice. You know? I chose to be arrogant and rude and disrespectful. I chose to slack off in class because I didn't really need to work, because my classes were too easy and I wasn't being challenged, so I just thought I could just do nothing, be lazy, and I still got good grades. Like, this was all my choice. Even though my friends were doing it, that didn't give me an excuse. I knew better, didn't I? Being raised in Seventh-day Adventist, knowing the 10 Commandments, memorizing all these things, I knew better. But because I wanted to be like everybody else, because I didn't want to stand firm for God, then I became this person that I never thought I would have been. And I chose to change. And I can be like Adam and blame Eve. I can blame everybody else, and I think at one point I did. I used every excuse you could possibly imagine. My teachers, how could you give me this grade, you know? You gave me this test, why did I get this grade? Like, it was their fault. I blamed my friends, I blamed my parents, and at one point I probably even blamed God. I said, God, how can you let me do this to other people? How can you let me be so mean to everybody that even I choose to love, and everybody that I care about? How can you let me be this way? When I was too blind to see that it was all my choice. God wasn't making me do anything bad. And I can't, now it seems like an abomination. I understand why we take the Lord's name in vain, because God is a good God, and He's a loving God. And for me to say that He made me do bad things, that's taking His name in vain. Not really understand what it means to praise the King of the universe. Like, you know how the world is big, and how we're small, but then the rest of the universe is even bigger. He's the creator of all of that. And I blamed Him because I was mean to the next person. God, who loves me so much and can do immeasurably more than I could imagine, and I blamed Him out of all people. And shame on me for that, because I knew the scriptures. And Proverbs 3, verse 5 and 6, I don't know if you guys know it, but it says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He shall direct your paths. But I didn't lean on God's understanding. I trusted on what Juliette could understand, on what she could see. You know, like those horses with the blinders, I could only see what was in front of me, when God could see the whole picture. And because I didn't trust in God's very broad understanding, and I trusted in only what I could see, the consequences were great. I didn't understand what kind of effect I was making on people. And I didn't understand that my choices were not that great, even though I had claimed to be a Christian, and even though I knew everything. I was only seeing this much of what God had intended for me. And so this caused my downfall. And keep in mind, I know all the Bible stories. Like, for instance, my favorite Bible character is Job. And we all know Job. He lost his family. He lost all his material wealth. He lost everything. And Sion brought out this verse on Tuesday? Yeah, Monday, one of those days. He brought up the verse that even when Job was sitting in sackcloth and ashes, and he was sitting there in misery, and he was mourning the death of his sons and all that he lost. But you know what he said? He said, naked I was born, and naked came I out of my mother's womb, and naked shall I return thither. The Lord gave, and the Lord hath taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. In all this Job sinned not, nor charged God. Job had just lost everything. His wife had just told him to curse God and die. Like, life was not good for him. But he still chose to bless the name of God. He still chose to not take God's name in vain. And to know that, and to just go, and to know, I don't even know how to explain it to you, to know something and yet not know something. To not really understand. I don't even know what it's like to lose someone close to me. I am lucky enough that I have my parents, and the grandparents that I know. I have all my family members, and yet Job loves everybody, and he still prays God. It's a hard thing, and to call myself a Christian, but not to understand the simple things I've been taught from yay high, it's hard. It's hard to think that this whole time it was just that the Word of God had not gotten more than skin deep, And so, Job trusted in God. He didn't understand what was happening, and he didn't understand why God was allowing this to happen. But he trusted that God knew more than him, and he blessed God's name because of that. And for me, when this was 7th grade, I was young, I am young, but I didn't think that God could understand what I was going through. I thought that because it was different for me, it was different for God, and that God couldn't possibly know what it's like to have friends who didn't believe in the same things he did. And I thought that he didn't understand what it was like to be different. But we have this example of Jesus who came to earth, and he wasn't very liked by a lot of people. He knew what it was like to be an outsider. And in the Sire of Ages, it even talks about how when Jesus was a little child, very few would seek his company. But many of them just scoffed. And even his own brothers, they didn't want to be around him because he reminded them of his fault. So Jesus knew what it was like to be an outsider. Jesus knew what I felt, and yet I didn't trust in him. I chose my way. And the biggest thing is that even if I had chose God, I didn't have very much to lose. We know the story of Hananiah, Azariah, and Mishael, or Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, right? They trusted in God, they knew God, and then the time came where they were going to be tested, right? So Nebuchadnezzar said, this is an idol, everyone should bow down to it or die in a fiery furnace. And those three chose the furnace. They chose to be burned up in a furnace of fire. I think something is hot when I'm putting it into the oven, but they chose to be put inside the oven because they wanted to stay true to God and true to what they believed in. And they trusted that God knew more than they did. And even if they had died, they still would have honored that decision to be true to God. Now, for me, if I had understood this concept of sacrifice, because God had done so much for me, I can't even imagine how much better my life would have been, because I didn't have that much to lose. Say that I did follow God and my friend said, you're weird, I don't want to be around you, but that's just one person. It's not like I was going to be thrown into a fiery furnace. They were just going to say they didn't like me. I had nothing to lose by choosing God, and yet I was like this, and I couldn't see that. It was more important to me to be liked than to stay true to God, the one who loved me more than they would ever like me. I chose my way. And that's one of the worst decisions we could ever make is to choose our way and not God's way. So fast forward, 8th grade year happens, and I try to be better, but still, it's not great. But then my brother Jules, he's at OA, and this miracle happens. And I know I tease Jules a lot when I'm here, but really, OA was a blessing for his life. He just became a new person. He would come home, and he was quiet and very just, I don't know, orderly and very respectful and kind, and all. I was ew, who is this person? I don't know you. But inwardly, I respected that change in him. And he had really, all the stories that we had been told, he now lived them. And he understood the concept of what it was like to trust in God. And I saw that change in his life. And then when I came to OA, it was kind of this place is set apart from the rest of the U.S. Like something bad could be happening like all around the way, but there's just this peace at Oklahoma Academy that I found. Everybody's all nice to each other when I came, and they're so happy, and all smiles, and it was just very different from what I was used to. And I wanted that for my life. I wanted to have that peace and happiness that came with really trusting in God. And I saw something better here, and I saw something better in my brother, and that's why I wanted to come here. But I will come here anyways. The last verse I want to share with you is one that we all know. John 3:16. Everyone knows it? Right. So, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. There's that one word, believe. Well, you believe in God, yes, but believe in Jesus, his sacrifice for you, and what that really means. You know, at Andrews University, they have the Passion Play, where you can go through and see the crucifixion of Jesus. And you can imagine the pain he went through. Jesus had been a perfect human, and he didn't deserve to be crucified. The most humiliating, painful death known to man at that time. He didn't deserve that. He didn't even have to do it. But because he loved you, and because he loved me, he decided to die for us. Even knowing that some of us wouldn't even choose him. And this makes me emotional because I think of all the things that I do chores for my mom, and I do this for my mom, and I do it begrudgingly, and I do it slowly, but I love my mom, so I still do it, right? We do it for our mom, something we love dear, and then for God, who loves us more than that, he died for us. He died for me because I wasn't brave enough to choose him, because I trusted on my understanding. He died for that, you know? That was very difficult for me to understand why he would even choose that. And so because of that, we believe in that sacrifice. He says we have the key to eternal life. He has given us everything we possibly need to enter into heaven. But guess what? You have to do something too. You have to believe that his sacrifice is enough. You have to take that stance to say, today, I want to choose Jesus. It doesn't matter what my friends are doing. It doesn't matter what my teachers say. I want to choose God. And you know, even if you don't, there at the end of time, it says that every knee shall bow and declare that God is Lord. So right now, in the long scheme of things, you're going to end up saying that God is King and acknowledging his supreme power. But which side of the gate that you are on is up to you. You have to choose for yourself whom you will serve. It's not anybody else's choice. You can raise your hand and you can stand up because other people are doing it, but in the end, it's not anybody else who's going to let you go into heaven. It's your own belief or disbelief. My mother would always tell me to stay true to myself, and I didn't really know what that meant. But staying true to yourself is being honest with the fact that you are a sinner and in need of God. To believe that Jesus made that sacrifice for you to enter into heaven, and to take that belief with you wherever you go. God has done all the work for us to believe. And every day Jesus is coming is not here, is a day for you to make the conscious choice to choose him. You don't have to, but it's so easy. And as I pray, I want you to make the choice today who you will serve. Let's bow. Dear Heavenly Father, I just want to thank you for loving us even when we act like we don't love you or when we don't know you, Lord. I want to thank you for Jesus' sacrifice that he made because he didn't have to do it, Lord, but he did it because he loves us. And I thank you for that love once more. And I ask that you would just give us a portion of your love to give to other people, that we would not only love God, but we would love our friends and our teachers and all those we come by, that we show the love of Jesus to them. Lord, forgive us when we choose to go our own way, and we choose to do the things that we only understand, and we do not trust in you. And I ask, Lord, that you would be with us, that you would send your Holy Spirit to be in our minds, so that you would tell us what is right and what is wrong, so that we can make the choice to do good. And I ask, Lord, that you would be glorified in each one of our lives, and I pray that every person in this room will choose God and choose to be in the pearly gates of heaven when the time comes. Thank you, Lord, for answering this prayer. In Jesus' name I pray.